Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Sales and Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, the host. Today, we've got a really special guest, and actually, Pete Garza. Pete, you are a not only two-time B2B CMO, but you've won a number of very, very impressive awards. Awards from Oracle, awards from Forrester, awards from Marketo, all in demand generation, and you reached the finalist. I think you were actually named top 25 ABM marketers in that top group. So what we're going to talk about today, I think you have a little bit to say. But you also have a rather unique background in being an engineer and how you bring that engineering mindset, to what you do and how you create hyper growth. And that's our topic, right? The engineering perspective on creating hyper revenue growth. So as we get started here, what I'd love to do is have you expand a little bit on your background. And maybe while you're doing that, name a few of the companies, because you've been instrumental at creating hyper revenue growth in your career. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about that as well.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Steve. Well, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm currently a CMO advisor at DealSignal. They're a leader in B2B contact data for companies who need highly accurate quality data for their sales outreach and marketing campaigns. So, but like you said, I've been a CMO, SVP of marketing, several companies that really been looking for hyper growth. They weren't happy with how sales were going. They were struggling. They had a great product, a great solution to disrupt the market, but they're running through challenges of being the best kept secret, not really having a solid go-to-market, not really having good sales and marketing alignment, not having a very compelling sales and marketing or differentiated positioning in the marketplace. And I would come in, understand it, put together a comprehensive plan, execute, and we would see the results come in and ultimately see hyper revenue growth typically within 6 to 9 months.
Well, and that doesn't come by accident, right? And we've promised this kind of, what is this engineering approach, right? And I think we all kind of have directionally where this is headed. But if you could kind of take us behind a bit of the science on how do you approach this and what you would term the engineering approach to creating this hyper growth.
Yeah, I started as a mechanical engineer, started at Caterpillar, as you know, and I always had this perspective for the world of making data-driven decisions. And as I was working with customers, I decided I really wanted to expand my knowledge base. So I got my MBA. And during that process, I discovered marketing. And it's funny, as an engineer, I thought marketing was smoke, mirrors, and parties. But as I got to really study what marketing is all about, it's very strategic. It is very much about communicating effectively to the market. It's about positioning company as a viable solution, really having that emotional connection at scale with the folks you're trying to market and sell to. So I really started during my MBA studies, have a deeper respect for marketing, but then discovering I could still apply the engineering that I've learned into how I go about with marketing. And it starts with the scientific method, right? The first thing I do is observe, determine the baseline performance, what's working, what's not, and ask the question, why aren't we growing faster? Why aren't we experiencing or having hyper revenue growth? And then doing the research, both the qualitative and the quantitative. I love the qualitative research because in many cases, you don't know what you don't know. And then the quantitative side really gets into validating these insights that you've gathered. Are it statistically representative of the market you're going after? And then you form a hypothesis, right? What are the root causes for non-hyper revenue growth? What's preventing, where are those roadblocks, seen and unseen, that's preventing you from actually, enjoying lots of revenue? And then put in place controlled experiments, right? Really pressure testing your differentiating messaging, pressure testing among different channels, pressure testing promotions and offerings, and really understanding the timing and the seasonality of things, and doing that and gathering data along the way, and then being able to optimize and iterate based on the data, and then communicate effectively with your teams, with the executive team, and what's working, what's not, and then continue in that process. So it's a never-ending journey, but that's really has been my approach of applying engineering to marketing, is applying as much as I can the scientific method and using data and observations and research and information all the time to continually optimize and improve.
You know what?
And that's ultimately how we get to the results that we're looking for.
there's a number of things that I love in there, but let me call out a couple of them, okay? Because we all have, as CMOs, we have our plans, right? And we do research and we look at qualitative and we look at quantitative. Here's one or two things that I don't think we regularly do that you were just talking about is what is our hypothesis of why we're not having hyper revenue growth? Because
That's correct.
if you have the hypothesis, right, you can share that hypothesis, you can debate that hypothesis, and ultimately you can come into consensus around that hypothesis. And that breaks down the silos, right, between sales and marketing, the whole go-to-market strategy, customer success. And we've done 8 different episodes with B2B CMOs on why we fail so quickly. We have the shortest tenure in the C-suite. The number one thing is not having that alignment. But that hypothesis is really the root cause, the reason why we're not going from here to here. And you could have that hypothesis, but if you didn't share it, right, it wouldn't be any good, right? It has to be a part of that whole team effort. So that's the first part. The second part is, I don't know that we experiment enough, right? We're one of the largest cost centers in the organization, right? So we have limited budgets, right? And we hold it precious. And doing constant experimentation means we're going to be spending some money. But if we don't experiment, then we're just going to keep trying the same old things over and over again. And we know what happens.
I have a really good mentor who said to me, Tom, I think he stole this from Albert Einstein, the definition of insanity, expecting different results, doing the same thing. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. So it's always having that mindset, okay, what are we going to have to try new and different? But obviously within reason, right? It's based on the hypothesis. And those root causes are really based on the research, really, to really even challenge ourselves. This unique value proposition we think we have, is it truly unique? Is it really resonating with the customers or prospects we're trying to sell to? Really? And what's the data to back that up that we may have a problem, right? Houston, we have a problem. And you're right, it lays down the framework to have those conversations, those deep discussions, peel the layers and really get down to the essence of what makes us unique and different and how we add value better than anyone else. And then the marketing, it becomes really just communicating that, the value prop at scale, but really doing that foundation, that framework up front is so critical. And you're right, my experience has been going through that process of workshops really helps us to all get aligned, the executive team to get aligned, which then we get the support between sales, product, and marketing to get on the same page. And we're all rowing in the same direction. And it's super exciting to be in that type of situation where everyone understands what's preventing us from growth. Everyone's working towards addressing those issues. And everyone can then celebrate together when we do get those results. And I'm the first to admit that it's not just marketing, it's a collective effort among product, marketing, and sales to work as a unified team to get those results. So the hyper revenue growth that we talked about.
And what I love too about this is that, as CMOs, we're constantly fighting for our rightful seat at the table, right? Because revenue is going to be there, right? Sales is going to be there. The CEO is going to be there. If you're not doing the kind of things that you're talking about, then you're the guy that's the demand gen guy, right? You're kind of a functional group within the company. What you're talking about, though, in like setting these hypotheses is for growth. And so you're leading the strategic discussion, right? Or a significant part of that strategic discussion that then gets discussed and buy-in, or you alter, but you ultimately are a significant part of that, right? So that strategic discussion is why we're at the table, right? So that we can do that and lead that. And I want to get into a little bit more about that strategic discussion a little bit later, but I mentioned that CMOs, we fail faster than any other C-suite, right? I know you've got some opinions on that and some common pitfalls that you think that CMOs fall into. I'd love to hear your ideas on that.
Yeah, I fall into myself too, right? The biggest one is we're in this elusive nature where we touch so many different areas. We're expected to solve many issues or address many challenges. At the same time, we need to always justify the spend. So I learned early on, don't overpromise and underdeliver, underpromise and overdeliver. I think another reason why CMOs fail is they don't have their pulse on the market They don't really understand what's going on a day-to-day basis because the market's changing so fast. You have to be at the leading cutting edge of what's new and what's exciting, especially with the market and who you're trying to market and sell to. And then be very much fully aligned with your sales leadership, make them your best friend, and even the CFO work as a unit. So that's been my secret to success, is really making the sales leader and the CFO my best friends, and really and getting them to see the value that my team provides through marketing, helping them to reach their goals, and to really have those conversations of then giving me the insights beyond just the executive meetings, what's working, what's not, and where we can do better. And same with CFO, this is what I can do a better job of showing return on investment, or we can afford things, where we can experiment, how much we can really put aside to experiment, things of that nature. So really having that close knit relationship with the CFO and with the sales leader is absolutely critical. And ultimately, CMOs, at the end of the day, it's about the revenue, baby, right? We can talk about improving share of voice, improving the branding, but it's very hard to measure. What's not hard to measure, it's easy to justify with, is pipeline and how it ties to revenue contribution. What also has helped me too is put in place a system that is scalable, repeatable, and predictable. So being able, knowing which dials to turn, where you can invest and not invest, and how much more pipeline you can generate, knowing your win rates in your sales cycle, where you can forecast within 85, 90% accuracy, how much revenue will be contributed to the company by investing X into marketing efforts, is huge.
Yeah.
And obviously that takes time, but getting to a point where you can really, knowing by turning certain dials will get you a certain amount of output, is huge, and absolutely a great way to keep you in your position and keep you growing as a CMO.
So one of the things you said in there that I think is the absolute most important, that people would probably say, yeah, I get it, right? I got to have a good relationship with my CRO. I got to have a good relationship with my CFO. And if you think about it, when companies get investment, VCs, private equity firms, they invest in the team first, the idea, the business second, right? Because the best idea for a business, if you don't have the right team to make it happen, right, it's not going to happen. So these relationships that you're talking about, you're part of the team, right? That team has to be a team together. So I just wanted to say, I totally agree with that. The other thing you said is that the CMOs don't always have like a finger on the market, right? The pulse of what's going on in the market. That aligns with one of my own beliefs, and I've asked this a million times on this podcast too. But the number one authority in any business is the customer, is your ICP. Gartner talks about CMOs, we got to be more chief customer officers, right? We got to understand this customer better than anyone else.
That's right.
Helps us develop that hypothesis that you're talking about, right? That gives us the seat at the table. If we represent the voice of highest authority in the business, right, we have a rightful seat at that table. I love everything you said there, but those two parts really, really stood out to me. So I want to get into hypergrowth. You actually have a framework. You actually have the 4 foundational pillars for hypergrowth. So I'd love to have you explain what those are to us.
Yeah, sure. The 4 pillars for hyper revenue growth start with having a customer-centric mindset. And it's more than just about, it's getting beyond the PowerPoints and the spreadsheets. It's really rolling up your sleeves, getting into the details, immersing yourself with customers and prospects, immersing yourself with sales, being there, the tip of the spear, and really trying to get down to the underlying understanding of the pain points, what's preventing customers from buying, understanding your product, your value proposition, and coming up with the actionable buyer insights that you can then incorporate in your marketing campaigns, incorporate your demand gen, your go-to-market. So that's the first thing, is really having a customer say. And I find too many marketers not spending time in marketing, and it's beyond just a CMO. It's having your entire team being part of that process. The second thing is having a marketing team leader that can lay down the groundwork and foundation. And that gets into having a 90-day assessment, just understanding what's working, what's not, doing the market research, the customer research, really having a good understanding of your unique value selling proposition, good understanding your go-to-market. Is that unique? Is it going to help you win? And then really coming up with an effective, comprehensive marketing plan that's going to generate the pipeline you need for revenue. The third is removing the friction throughout the organization from a customer standpoint. What's preventing your sales team from selling? What's preventing your customers from buying? Really getting into and pressure testing every touch point with your customer prospect, from the marketing, the communication, the content, to them wanting to buy, wanting to schedule a meeting, to understand the follow-up, and they're getting their questions answered, to them giving the right, proof points and information so they can make an informed decision and having the business case to justify their decision moving forward. All those needs to be tested and understood. It really is amazing to me, and it's not, because I've done this so many times. We take things for granted. We have the curse of knowledge, and we assume that things are working the way they should, and they're not, right? Especially from the touch point of the customer. So that's really the third pillar. And the fourth pillar is putting in place a perpetual marketing engine that's generating pipeline day in, day out. It's not about waiting just for your next campaign, but having an engine that's continually, perpetually generating pipeline, generating conversations, generating interest day in, day out. And then you boost it with seasonality or with certain promos. But you need to have that in place so that you can then predict its performance and then generate accurate forecasts, so that then the company can continually get funding and support to continually grow the engine and see hyper revenue growth. Because you have to continually feed the engine. You got to feed the beast. Once you start the momentum going, you can't stop it, but you have to have the analytics to be able to justify or show that if I invest X amount, I'm going to get Y in return. So those really are the four pillars. And I can go a lot more detail on each four, but that pretty much, I would say, sum up those four things that you need to have in place to see hyper revenue growth.
Well, I'd love to go deeper in one in particular, and that's this perpetual revenue engine, right? There's not one of us listening that isn't thinking, I want that perpetual revenue engine. And what I've heard CMOs talk about is we have a flywheel. It's however we state it. What's your thoughts on how do you create that perpetual revenue engine? What does it take to actually do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I call it engine. It's more of a system that involves product, sales, and marketing, and working in unison, and not even customer service, your customer support teams. I have a visual, but if you could just envision as I described this, you start with the customer who you're targeting. Is the messaging clear, differentiated, is easy to consume and understand? And then you have a really well laid out content marketing plan. So all this engagement through online channels and face-to-face, in-person channels, it's all fueled by engaging multimedia content, thought leadership, best practices, proof points, depending where they are in the funnel, their buying process. Are they just trying to find more information or trying to find solutions to a problem, or they're looking to see why you're better than someone else, right? That type of proof point content. And then you have a way leveraging technology to measure those engagements with all these different prospects that you're reaching out to, both through outreach and inbound efforts. And you measure and track that, and you score their engagement. And those that are not very engaged or the timing's not right, you stay in touch, you nurture, right? Through multiple means. It's not just through email, and you want to stay top of mind. So when they're ready to buy, typically 3/4 of prospects are going to buy within the next 2 years, studies have shown. So they may not be ready to buy today, but you want to be still top of mind when they're ready to buy within the next 2 years.
Yes.
So you're really building that future pipeline, if you will, by just providing that thought leadership, that valuable content to be top of mind. Those that are in the market today are typically the 5% or so that really are warm or hot, and the remainder are warm. Need to then have an engaging conversation. And, we're leveraging AI as well to better sift through those and qualify them. But ultimately, you want them served up to sales, and then having ability to provide sales enabling content, the interactive tools, the proof points, the one-pagers, the presentations, the videos that really help customers better understand how your product can address a particular use case they're trying to solve. And then having a way to measure, having opportunity management in place to measure those deals that have been generated by marketing, see how they're progressing through the sales cycle, and then having a cadence of reporting dashboards that show which deals are converting, which ones aren't. And then being proactive to knowing which of these deals that maybe have stalled or they need to be resuscitated or revived, and providing necessary insights in those as well. And the technology helps with that. And then once a customer has been sold to or they become a new customer, then you want to have an ability for them to refer, make it super easy for them to refer their friends and their colleagues in their network to want to consider your solution, which then will help further feed your pipeline with even higher quality leads that are typically would close faster and at a higher win rate because they were referred by their trusted friends in their network. And so that all works in unison, and that enables you to be able to accurately forecast your future revenues, which then gives you the credibility with your investor community, your private equity firms, et cetera. If you deliver what you promise, then they'll know if you promise more, you'll get a higher multiple and higher valuation. So that pretty much is the marketing engine, perpetual marketing engine system that I put in place as a result of doing your homework, the research, the hypothesis, the data to understand what's going to be put in place to generate pipeline.
I want to say thank you for a 5-minute course. How do we do that? That was fantastic. One of the things in there that a lot of organizations don't have the patience for, and what you said is there's 5% in the market right now, right? And it can be up to 2 years, but the rest is they're going to get into the point where they're ready to buy. So you can't just start, right, and expect I'm going to come in and no matter when somebody comes into the market to buy, they're ready, they know about us, they think really well of us, they're going to put us on their consideration list. You got to warm that audience up. And there was a brilliant B2B CMO, 3-time B2B CMO, and she said, today's brand is tomorrow's demand.
That's right.
And we look at these as very different activities, right? And especially if you're a CRO or a CSO or a CEO and you've got a quota and you're going to go in front of the board and they're going to ask, how are we doing on the quota this quarter? How are we doing on the pipeline for next quarter, right? And somebody brings up brand, like you're the guy that's under the firing squad, right? So what I love is how you articulated it as part of this whole process, right? That's it has to be a part of that nurturing, that warming up, that establishing our relevancy, the thought leadership and all of that. So I appreciate that because you connected the tissue there that I think most of the time is not connected. I just wanted to say thank you for doing that as well.
Oh, no. And I'd seen it in action. A company that I worked at previously, when I joined the company was 600,000 ARR, and within 18 months grew it to 13 million ARR.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the best kept secrets, AI gun detection to prevent mass shootings at schools and hospitals. And you'd say, okay, it could be everywhere. There's 100 million cameras and they have AI technology that can overlay on existing security cameras and it detect guns that are visible and notify authorities within 3 to 5 seconds to prevent a mass shooting or minimize loss of life, provide, situation awareness. And early on, as I was visiting, immersing myself with customers we're trying to sell to, our engineers or technical guys, God bless them, were talking about minutes, frames per second, latency, all types of technical specs that were really over blowing past the decision makers. And we ended up really through the process that I had shared with you before, laying down the groundwork, we came up with a tagline the company didn't have was save time, save lives, and providing situational awareness and minimizing your risk and keeping your people safe, right? Which is really resonating to the target market. And going to the brand point I'm trying to get to is we decided to put in place a public relations effort and we started slowly building brand awareness. And unfortunately, when there was ever a mass shooting, CNN, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Inside Edition, Fox News, they would come. And when they would do coverage on us, our pipeline, our number of leads would actually spike.
Oh, very good.
So every time there was coverage of what we do and the value we provide, not really getting specifically to the product, but really providing overview of the brand and what we stand for, we saw a significant increase in our pipeline generation.
So it was the same product, same technology, same sales team, right?
Yes.
But you just weren't talking right to the people who were the decision makers. A perfect reason why you said at the very beginning that you love the qualitative input, right? Talking with customers, right? Understanding where their mindset is and where their risk is and where their emotions lie, right? That's a huge part of that. And at the same time, what you did, you just put a perfect segue into the question I was going to ask, because it was the importance of storytelling, right? It was interesting hearing you talk about how do you create a perpetual revenue engine, but then hearing you actually talk about it in an example. And you told the story, right? What was the problem, right? And wasn't working as well. We went from 600,000 ARR to over 13 million in 18 months. All of a sudden, all of our ears went up, and then you told us how you did it. We retain things 22 times more if they're told to us in the form of the story. So
That's right.
the story that was being told was a bunch of bullet points on latency and stuff like this, right? I'm sure it was. You told a story like you want to keep your kids safe. You want to know within seconds. You want the police automatically alerted, right? You know, and everybody's going to be nodding their heads. I'm like, yes, you told it to them in a form that made sense. In terms of storytelling and marketing, you actually have another story when you were with Caterpillar that you wanted to talk about.
Yes, it was interesting. Caterpillar, considered one of the top 50 brands in the world, $100 billion company, et cetera, over 100,000 employees, very well-known brand. I was given a problem to solve where there was a particular business unit or business selling genuine parts to overhaul engines in the on-highway space. And it was roughly about a $30 million business, but it was seeing declines of sales year over year. And they were considering the shutting down the business unit because the trend was not there. It was going the wrong way. So I came in, didn't really know much about the on-highway business per se. Rolled up my sleeves, went and visited customers and dealership and their repair shops, understood the competition, the market, the drivers. And what's really fascinating is you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of customers or prospects, we branded ourselves as CAT, right? Short for Caterpillar. And they called CAT as can't afford that. They saw Caterpillar brand as the Taj Mahal, an elusive thing that they can never consider to meet their needs. So they would automatically go to the competition because they assumed that we're just too highly priced and too hard to work with. And there was some truth behind that, as a matter of fact. The way we were packaging and offering our product to market could be considered maybe too expensive, not affordable. We were not easy to do business with. And understanding those underlying issues or root causes of growth. And I went back to the executive team and said, hey, we need to change the way how we do business for this particular market. We're considered can't afford that. We're considered too hard to work with. And these are things that we need to fix. These are root causes preventing from hyper growth. And we did that. Within 6 months, we launched a new product. We changed our messaging, our positioning, our advertising. We trained the sales team and we grew it to a $200 million business in 2 years and ended up winning the President's Quality Award as a result. But yeah, it really goes back to don't assume that everyone knows. And the truth of the matter is I had the benefit of not having the curse of knowledge.
Right.
I was asked to come in with a completely clean slate, different perspective. I didn't know anything, quite frankly. I just asked a bunch of questions, immersed myself with the customers, with sales, with operations, understand what was working, what's not, and what's preventing growth. And discovered that, pressure tested it, and saw huge success as a result.
Well, we've now heard two really good stories of hyper growth, right? What I want to do is I want to take everything that we've talked about and have you boil it down to if there was one takeaway that you wanted us to have from listening in or watching this podcast, what would that be?
That's a great question. CMOs in particular have a tough time. We spend a lot of time trying to justify the team, the spend, and even getting a seat at the table. And ultimately, I think we need to take a different perspective of saying, how do I say this in the most effective way? We as marketers can make a huge impact. There's another company that I worked at, financial services SaaS company, and the CEO and founder ultimately admitted to me that he was not a believer in marketing. He spent all his money in sales and engineering and product development. And he had a good mentor of his said that you better bring someone in marketing to help you out. So I came in, their website was all over the place, their messaging. We had no idea what they're really selling, really cleaned things up and helped them grow from 3.5 million to 20 million in AR in just 1 year. And he came to me a year later, and this is the biggest, I'd say, compliment is I see the importance of marketing. We couldn't have grown this fast or this much without having marketing in place. And the message I would leave through is that marketing plays a huge role. I know we believe that, but it's our job really to show with specific examples through our results and the performance we deliver that marketing can really make a difference. And then obviously we'll be invited to the table. In a telemedicine company, we got acquired for $1 billion for great successful exit. I helped them double their revenue in a couple of years. And the CTO came up to me, and once again, he said, Pete, I have to really apologize to you. I thought I could do marketing, but then when I understood what you were doing, doing really sophisticated market research, doing conjoints analysis and qualitative, quantitative studies and statistics, and which help with the pricing, with the go to market. He was like, I didn't really understand that until you did it. And then I have a much higher respect, not only for you, but for the marketing function. And that was a CTO, right? He was actually involved in helping with PayPal in the early days, et cetera. So it was cool to see that. So I guess my message here, try to boil it down. So I'm not doing such a good job of boiling it down, is that I think we need to pat ourselves on the back and realize that marketing can play a huge role in helping with hyper revenue goals. It's not all about the CRO. Obviously, you need sales to close the deals, but I really believe that marketing could be very, very instrumental in hyper growth. And once you embrace that and really start working towards that, everything else falls into place.
Oh, I love it. And I have a feeling that there are going to be people who want to ask additional questions. And so would it be appropriate if we gave out your link to your LinkedIn profile that people could reach out to you?
Absolutely. Sure.
Fantastic. Well, Pete, again, thank you. Thank you for the mini course. Thank you for everything, the takeaway. We all learned something significant today, and congratulations on all the success you've had.
Thanks. I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun.